As an IT specialist and major in computer science, those computer stuff, IT, information technology, the major things are the two fields are networking and coding, programming. Okay, these are the two main fields. If you could manage them very well, and then you will be very fine in the IT industry, because coding, programming are very interrelated with networking, because when you are talking about networking, normally you have some batch configuration using Python, so you can configure the new switches and routers and also the firewalls as well, because there are so many new routers, firewalls when you are deploying in the new companies. So there are maybe 100 more firewalls, routers. So I don't think you can type it on the CLI, on the command line, bit by bit. You just use Python and then batch installation. That's okay, using some kind of coding. So coding, programming are very useful and important. And for IT specialists or IT field, when you go to the this industry, you have to learn the CCNP. At least you have this kind of cert, so you will know a lot about the routing, RIP, WIP, and OSPF, BGP, IBGP, and EIGRP, static route. At least you know those kind of things, the terms, and VLAN, VXLAN, and what else, and the security policy and policy security and zone security. You know how to configure the security policy with the new firewall, and also you have to define the VLAN and the route to the different router, route to the internet service provider, etc. At least you know it. After getting the CCNA, you have the concept, and then you have the ACL, and you know how to what kind of subnet, those kind of things. And once you have the networking skill, you will also have the coding. It's like you need to learn. I encourage you to learn a different syntax of the program, the languages. It's like you should come across like the all languages like C++, Python, MySQL, Java, JavaScript, CSS, HTML5, and assembly language, etc. Once you know all, and you will notice that they are very similar with their syntax. So you don't need to worry. Once you know all the languages, at least you have all the languages structures or something, and then you can just verify it, and for other language, and then other language, it will be easier for you to learn other language as well. But some kind of differences are your assembly language is a little bit different, like MOV, and AL1H, those kind of things is different from those high-level language, because the assembly language is kind of low-level language, so it's closer to the computer 1010 computation. So that's why it's a little bit difficult for you to learn the assembly language, but at least you need to know it, learn it a little bit, at least for the surface. At least you have to come across it. So other languages are very similar. It's like they will also contain if else and variable, boolean, and for loop, while loop, those kind of similar function, then you can just verify it's something, then you will have new languages. So, and what's more, because there's two fields, networking and programming. Programming, once you know the two fields, then you will surprise in the IT industry. Why? Because every company is connected with different computers. So there is no only one single computer working. So every company needs, the networking skilled people. So if you know networking, then you will have a job. You will have career opportunity. You won't be fired easily. At least you can have a job. Won't be fired even the economy is bad, like the COVID-19, that kind of period. You still survive. I mean, you cannot earn much, but at least you will survive. You won't be fired. You won't be fired. You won't be laid off. Okay. So, and what's more? Yeah. Once you have networking and a little bit coding, because network is related to coding and a little bit coding, so you can do troubleshooting, like typing on the command line. You will do more command line, those kind of things, and you will learn, and it will be easier for you to learn and improve your skill. And moreover, you also need to touch some kind of Linux. You have to use Linux and some kind of CPU architecture knowledge, principal, memory, those register, instruction sets, x86, ARM, Longson. Because I'm Chinese, I'm using Chinese CPUs, so we have a long arc by Longson, Zhaoxin, x86, and Longson, and SW, Sunway architecture, instruction sets. They will have different instruction set. And touch more Chinese CPU. Why my computer skill is better? Because I touch a lot of Chinese CPUs like Longson using long arc instruction sets. So I know the differences of the different instruction sets, like the Huawei using the ARM CPU instruction set by the SoftBank and the British ARM company. So Longson self-invented long arc instruction set. Previously they used the long ISA, but now using Longson long arc. That's why when you come across more of those kind of Chinese CPU, you will know more about the CPU architecture and instruction sets. They cannot run different. The software cannot run on different CPU architecture instruction sets. But recently, Apple and Longson using the binary translate. So they can translate the x86, translate to ARM CPU. So ARM CPU can also execute the x86 instruction set. This is very important and very unprecedented, so that you can use the different instruction sets softwares with different computer CPU. That's very amazing. And then it depends on your CPU speed. If your CPU speed is fast enough, so while translating the instruction sets, it will just cost a little bit performance. Maybe still have a 70 to 80% of the performance. So I think you can be usable. So why I know another thing is because I touched a lot about the CPU instruction set, Chinese CPU and memory, those kind of stuff. You have to learn it. And SQL, you have to learn the MySQL. At least you have some database knowledge, and also some OS operation system like your Chinese phone, Huawei, Harmony OS, and the virtual machine. At least you know the Harmony OS and based on Linux and those kind of VM or something. Linux and the Android open source project, AOSP and Linux and AOSP together in parallel, so that the Harmony OS can run the a Android app because it's an open source, so it's okay for they to use, no problem, right? So they have those kind of things. You will understand more operation system and some kind of software engineering, those kind of things you need to know. And Chinese OS, Chinese Harmony OS, and Linux, because Chinese OS is normally using Linux open source to develop their OS. So the Chinese Linux. So when using more Chinese OS, you will know more about the Linux and those kind of OS, and it's very important to relate it to the programming, coding, Linux terminal, those kind of thing, typing sudo apt-get install, sudo apt-get, what kind of those kind of software installing and from the repository and networking, those kind of things, interrelators and Chinese CPU, those kind of things. So once you get to conclude, you have CCNP, networking basic skill, and your basic coding, and learn all the languages and focus on one, maybe Python to more advanced to intermediate to advanced, and other languages are almost similar with some similar syntax. And try to know more about the CPU architecture, so you will know the memory and the coding sent to the memory, and the memory go to the CPU with the threading, processing, executing the via the CPU, and then transfer, convert to the 1010 digital signal. Those kind of very basic stuff you will know. So this is my experience for having survived in the IT industry. Then will be okay for you to stay longer in this industry. Just focus on two fields, networking and coding. Once you can cope with these two fields, then other things like installing a computer with network and some kind of Windows have some kind of coding, typing the command line, those kind of things, it easy to solve. When you have some kind of easy problems like installing the software and troubleshooting, the printer cannot print the stuff, the driver, the network, the printer cannot connect to the other printer, or the NAS, how to set up NAS, IP phone, all the things you will know because you have network basic and coding, some kind of coding, bash coding your SQL, because sometimes your office will have 30 people, so you have to bash install with the SQL site database or Python to bash config those kind of things to the IP phone. You don't need to type it one by one. Okay, all right. Networking and coding, the ways for you to succeed in IT industry.